In the last video, we worked on the exercise about the organizational climate between HP and Apple. Let's work on it together. HP lists out a set of the shared value and organizational culture to the employees as well as their clients, their customers. For example, like they emphasize on passions for customers. They put the customers first in everything that they can do. And also building a trust and respect climate so that people work together, build on trust, respect, and dignity. Achievement and contributions, and they will consider people's contributions to the success. Results for teamwork, they highly emphasize on the team-based organization structure and meaningful innovation as well as uncompromising integrity. It is quite surprising to see that HP highly emphasized on meaningful innovation. That is very different from other IT companies. IT company, if they emphasize on innovation and creativities, and they rarely emphasize on meaningful innovation, because in the reality, as we can see that many innovative and highly creative products and services, they are not really very meaningful. And well, we could also see that it's not really very useful as well, but it's just for being the pioneer in the market. But HP is highly emphasized on meaningful innovations in the sense that they want to produce the products and services that are very useful and significant to the customers. And so as you can see that this organizational culture is very different from other IT companies. If you look into the organizational culture of Apple company, and you can see that even though they also highly emphasize on creativity and innovation, but they never talk about meaningful innovation. Instead, they highly emphasize on creativities from every corner. They are providing the products to the customers in a very creative manner. But it doesn't mean that this creativity and innovation is very, very useful and durable and also significant to the customers. So as you can see that compared with the climate, the culture between HP and Apple, they are taking into different approaches, although both of them emphasize on creativity and innovation. So in this case, if the employees, they are working in Apple company and probably they were taking more risk and taking initiative to making some highly new product. But in HP, the employees probably on one hand, they want to produce some high-tech product, but at the same time, they also need to consider about whether they're meaningful, durable, and also affordable to the customers. So, well, you can see that these two approaches of the organizational climate were also affecting the employees' behavior and thinking. In short, why is culture so important? Because it provides insight in the organization, how things are done and why. So the example of HP and Apple telling us that these two organizations taking two different approaches. Second, it can also help to select the right candidate. Person organizational fit. We have to find someone, the candidates, who is well fit to the organizational climate. Say, for example, like HP, and probably, well, we should hire someone that on one hand, they're high tech, but more important is they also consider about the customer's concern, etc., etc. But well, for Apple company, probably they're not too caring too much on the durability and also practicability of the product. Instead of creativity and innovation is more important. That's why they may hire someone who is very innovative, proactive person. Performance, and it's also largely explained to the situation that as long as the organizational climate, the culture is positive and strong, and it is likely will help to generate profit in the organization. And well, we also need to understand about organizational culture so that to introduce the concept about organizational change in the in the company, because nowadays, as you can see, that the external environment is keep changing, very turbulent. So the employees, the organizations need to change the climate in accordance with the external environment. The next issue is organizational change. As I said that the topic of organizational climate and organizational change, they will come hand in hand. They have a very close relationship. On one hand, because well, today's environment is very, very turbulent. So change is ever present in organization that we cannot predict or even we cannot be avoided. So that's why it seems that the organizational change is a kind of the ongoing process. Manager also need to list their ability and also the lack of the capability, the rooms for the improvement to manage some changes as number one obstacle to increase the competitiveness in the organization. If your organization do not change but other change, and so eventually the organization will left behind. So that's why managers should be aware of their strengths and weaknesses. So in order to increase the competitiveness of the company, there are some reasons to drive the organizational change. One of the major reasons is the high technology, because nowadays the organizations will rely on high technologies to communicate with the employees as well as the customers. And so with the high technology, we're allowing them not only to work with those locally, but also internationally. So this may be one of the ways that will change the organizational structure, become boundless. And for the knowledge exploration, and now, as you can see that the employees are the knowledgeable workers, and so what they do wish is not only depends on the training, opportunity, etc., or the higher salary. Instead, they also look into some interesting job and for whether they got the career development in a company, etc. So this also driving the organization to have create more opportunities for their employees. Today, well, because the customers' demand and expectation change very often, and so the products and services easily to get outdated. So that's why also to help the organization to factor in their organizational structure, so that will without many structures and layers, and so the organizations will allow the employees having more authorities and will to control over their work. And this is also one of the changes that we can see nowadays. And changing the nature of the workforce from a more prominent one to a more contract-based or a more dynamic one, because in the past we will require the employee to physically to work in the company, but now we don't necessarily need to do it, and we can hire people from anywhere, and we can also split job into some part-time or some contract-based job, so that we'll have more flexibility not only for the organization but also to the employees themselves. The quality of the working life. In the past, we don't highly emphasize on the work-life balance, but today, with not only the work-life balance, we also need to emphasize on the work-life and school balance. And so the employees also will need some time and some resources to develop themselves. And well, because of some legal regulatory factors, and so will organization also need to change. Like recently, many country are highly emphasized on ethics, and so the company also need to follow those legal and regulatory requirement for that, expectation for that. But the changing nature of the business become more globalization, and so your competitors even are not only the one who's next to you. So this is also quite important change for today's organization. Social political change, and recently is the COVID-19, and so in this few years, organization probably they also need to change their working mode and their business mode, etc. Change within the organization because of change of the leadership, change of the CEO, and so it will also change the climate, the culture of the organization. Economic climate, if it's dropping, and also what the organization need to do, and probably they need to factor in it, and so in order to save the cost and to lay off those middle managers. So all those are the drive, are the reason for the organizational change. And usually, we can differentiate the types of the changes into both the soft one and also the hard one. Soft one is something that is not easily observable, such as their culture, leadership styles, their interpersonal network, behavior, teamwork, and also their knowledge and skills development, etc. For the hard one, those are explicit, are more observable, like structure, strategies, technology, physical location, etc. So we can basically differentiate it into these two major types of changes. The types of the changes can be also differentiated into episodical and also the continuous one. And whether this is quite infrequent, like nowadays, recently we have the COVID-19, and so for this one, and we are assuming that this is not very frequent, and this is very sudden, and so that's why we also can be participate by we cannot expect it unless it really comes, and so we have to take it into consideration about it. For the continuous change, and probably because the company is going through a developmental process, they are updating and also doing something improvement. That's why it's on a continuous basis. In this kind of a change, it seems likely that it's not a big changes usually. It's a kind of the accumulative change, and then can add up to the substantial change eventually. Transformational change means intended to have a rapid change, a great change in terms of their strategies, structure, people, value, process, etc. Incremental change is slightly change and we're concerned about the improvement, efficiency, and also the effectiveness of the changes. However, while many organizational those, they consider the change is a necessary thing, but it seems that it's not always successful. According to the research, we can see that between 60 to 80% of the changes fail to achieve their original objective. What are the problems? And basically, we can see that because it's about organization culture. It is not very easy to change the organizational culture. If the organizational culture is strong, and if you like to change it, and even it's harder, and so usually will become the obstacle for the organizational change. The second reason is the psychological reaction of the people. People usually do not like to change, so that's why it's also will become one of the big obstacles to have the organizational change. It is a very common problem to see that if the proposed change will contradict or very different from the original culture and tradition, and so it must be quite challenging to change the organizational climate. This is one of the examples that we can see. And for HP, as I said that, they changed the organizational culture. This is not an easy job. This is quite challenging. I would highly recommend you to spend some time to watch these videos and to get a sense that how the CEO will help in to change the organizational culture. This is not an easy job, but if the organization successfully doing that, will bring into the next stages of the company. Otherwise, the company HP will be suffer and probably will be disappear in the market as well. So please watch these videos, and we will move on to the next videos, the next section.